1. Water Luffy. Peak performance right out of the gate. Warlord of the Sea, Crocodile. A formidable foe Luffy encountered early on. An extremely powerful enemy. Logia powers were nearly unbeatable back then. After a fierce battle with Old Man Crocodile, Luffy was nearly killed on the spot. Reflecting on his painful lesson, Luffy returned with a water barrel to challenge him again. Contact with water could hit Crocodile's true form. Crocodile praised Luffy's sharp insight. On the brink of death, he actually managed to find his weakness. Crocodile burst into loud laughter and launched an attack right at Luffy's water barrel. Without that bucket of water, Luffy was nothing at all. Luffy had a sudden flash of inspiration. You're completely right. Without that very water barrel, without water, I am nothing at all. So why not try combining them? Luffy's imagination ran wild. He poured the barrel's water straight into his belly, inventing a brand new form on the spot. Oh no, the water is leaking out. Crocodile's expression was identical to Kaido's over 2 years later. Is this kid actually serious about fighting? Luffy spat a mouthful of salted water right at Crocodile's face. Crocodile panicked, because getting wet meant he could no longer turn into elements. Luffy struck with a jet pistol, delivering internal bleeding to Crocodile, forcing him to unleash his ultimate move, cracking the dry ground wide open, turning the terrain into a vast desert. Even Water Luffy, filled to the brim with mineral water, couldn't withstand this devastating attack, sucked dry into a husk by Crocodile. 2. Gear Second. The Straw Hat crew on their arduous journey, as enemies grew increasingly stronger. Standard rubber techniques clearly could no longer meet their needs. So Luffy developed the gum fruit further, and created Gear Second. Strictly speaking, the anime debut of Gear Second should be in the feature film, Mechanical Soldier of Karakuri Castle. When the island's ruler rolled over Luffy with a giant machine, Luffy felt immense pressure, and literally turbocharged under the weight. His legs performed a shifting motion, while steam began venting from his body. But Luffy truly mastered Gear Second during the Enies Lobby arc, while fighting the CP9 Dort or Fruit User Bluno, right in the heat of battle, in an era before hockey became mainstream. The Navy's 6 powers were top-tier martial arts. Bluno used Shave and Iron Body to fight Luffy to a complete standstill. Luffy just smiled at that moment while fighting Aokiji earlier. He had been pondering a serious question. The journey ahead was filled with hardships. Demons and monsters were growing stronger. Things couldn't continue the way they were. He had to become much stronger. Otherwise, he couldn't protect his crewmates. If he couldn't surpass everyone in strength, he would lose every single one of them. The Navy's 6 powers inspired Luffy, teaching him the combat style of Gear Second. His legs pumped power into his body like a supercharger. Plentiful steam enveloped his body, and his skin turned a glowing, luminous red. You can't beat me anymore. Gear Second. Entering Gear Second, Luffy claimed all his attacks leveled up. Bluno looked at Luffy with contempt, still thinking Luffy was just bluffing. Before Luffy could launch an assault, Bluno vanished into thin air using Shave. Gum Jet Pistol. The exact instant Bluno used Shave, Luffy struck out with an empty-handed blow and knocked Bluno straight to the ground. Bluno scrambled back to his feet, his eyes widened like copper bells, completely dumbfounded. Yet Luffy had already vanished from sight, filled with doubt and utter shock. Bluno was knocked down by a sudden punch from Luffy. Invisible. Luffy's Gear Second speed far surpassed the Navy's Shave. In all of Bluno's combat experience, this was an absolute first. Bluno was beaten with no room to counter. In desperation, he retreated into the Dort or dimension, attempting to launch a surprise attack on Luffy. Little did he know Luffy's reflexes far exceeded his own. The moment Bluno reappeared, Luffy deftly sidestepped, followed up with a jet bazooka, shattering Bluno's ultimate defense, Iron Body full strength, and striking Bluno down, thus shattering the myth of the Navy's 6 powers. 3. Giant Descent. Luffy unlocks Gear Third. Right as Luffy mastered Gear Second, he had already learned Gear Third when Bluno took Luffy's jet bazooka head-on. Luffy assumed Bluno could take more, and bit down on his thumb, preparing to deploy Gear Third. Sadly, Bluno didn't last until that moment, collapsing to the ground with a smile. After defeating Bluno, Luffy went off in pursuit of Robin, meeting the twin-tailed Chimney along the way. Chimney pointed Luffy toward a shortcut. The corridor ended in a massive iron door. Luffy clenched his fist tightly, telling Chimney to back away. Before activating Gear Third, with immense destructive power, he shattered the iron gate. Chimney was left speechless in utter shock. The side effects of Gear Third were intense, shrinking Luffy smaller than tiny Chimney. He hurried onward to catch up with Robin. Before long, Luffy caught up to Rob Lucci and engaged him in a fierce clash. At that moment, the massive Navy fleet neared Enies Lobby. The Buster Call was about to begin. Luffy had to end the fight quickly if he wanted a truly gritty battle. Then he would show him another fighting style. Gear Third. Luffy bit down on his thumb and blew a massive breath inside. His entire arm inflated like a balloon, growing to an enormous scale. Gum Jiggin' Pistol. Before crossing paths with Luffy, CP9 had seemingly never faced an opponent breaking Iron Body, so they possessed a mysterious confidence in it. It seemed every CP9 member before defeat had to utter the words Iron Body. Anyone with half a brain knew Luffy's massive fist would hurt. Lucci, just like Bluno, chose to take the blow head-on with Iron Body. Luffy brought his fist crashing down, deforming Lucci's face entirely, sending him flying backward. The tower was smashed to smithereens. Suddenly, the punch failed to knock Lucci into the sea, instead blasting him onto a warship opposite, which ultimately spared Lucci's life. Luffy pursued him shortly after, and split the warship in two with a Gigantax. The clash between Lucci and Luffy destroyed the vessel, while other warships closed in to bombard them. Luffy's Gear 3rd timer ran out, landing him back on Eni's lobby. Shrunken down into a child, boosted by Gear 2nd and 3rd, Luffy went wild for dozens of episodes, until meeting his match at Sabaody Archipelago. Luffy realized that raw speed or raw strength alone was completely useless. He needed to combine both, along with Haki, to face the challenges ahead. 4. Precursor to Gear 4th, Nightmare Luffy. Luffy had his shadow stolen by Moria. Luffy raced back toward Moria's location. Meanwhile, Zoro and the others, hiding deep within the forest, paralyzed by fear, terrified of dissolving into nothingness if touched by sunlight. Luffy screams in sheer panic. Dawn's approach spells ultimate doom. He must retrieve his shadow before sunrise. Luffy races relentlessly toward Moria. Meanwhile, Zoro and the others battle fiercely against the Oz zombie holding Luffy's shadow. Oz's colossal body combined with Luffy's raw power proves completely unstoppable. Even Zoro's incredible strength falls short against him. Deep in the woods, Luffy encounters a massive crowd, victims whose shadows were stripped away by Moria. In the Straw Hats, they witness a glimmer of hard-fought hope. Through long and bitter observation, these people have unraveled the secret of Moria's shadows. Stuffing stolen shadows into one's own body grants the terrifying power of those shadows. Much like stacking multiple buffs in battle, a normal human can only hold 2 or 3 before reaching their absolute limit. Lola estimates that, given Luffy's constitution, packing 20 or 30 is nothing. Yet this borrowed strength lasts merely 10 minutes. Before the restless shadows tear free and rush back to their rightful owners, driven by reckless desperation. Ignoring Luffy's consent entirely, they pin him down and cram shadows inside, stuffing a staggering 100 shadows, forcing Luffy into a violent, unnatural evolution. Nightmare Luffy awakens at low power, a terrifying juggernaut capable of fighting and tanking. They pin him down and cram shadows inside, effortlessly swatting away Oz's giant fist with a single, devastating punch. He sends Oz flying backward, leaving Oz utterly battered and humiliated. Nightmare Luffy's unrivaled power terrifies all. A pity this formidable cheat code isn't permanent. The 10-minute trial card expires swiftly. All 100 shadows burst from Luffy's body. Luffy collapses back to his normal state. 5. Giant Luffy. Shortly after entering the New World, Luffy crosses paths with Lily of the Giant Warrior Clan to rescue others in dire peril. Luffy incurs the wrath of new Marine Vice Admiral Shuzo. Gear 2nd proves completely useless against Shuzo's defenses. Lily takes matters into her own hands, plunging inside Luffy, expanding into a giant within his vessel of flesh. Since Luffy is rubber, his body adapts seamlessly. Empowered by this colossal state, the destructive force of Gear 2nd multiplies exponentially. The blistering heat nearly evaporates the surrounding ocean, decimating Shuzo in a single, flawless strike. 6. Iron Bouncer, the fusion of speed and strength in Gear 4th. Doflamingo stands as the first true overlord, encountered by Luffy in the treacherous New World, driving both Luffy and Law to the brink of annihilation. Doflamingo firmly commands the upper hand. Yet as Luffy slowly raises his arm and utters the sacred words, Gear 4th, the entire atmosphere surges with electric tension. Luffy kicks off his supreme grade sandals, coating his arms densely in armament Haki, before pumping air deep into his muscles, inflating them into a formidable muscular balloon. Haki and compressed air flood his entire physique. Gear 4th, Bounce Man. The sheer hype of Luffy's transformation back then rivals the overwhelming excitement of Gear 5th today. Gear 4th carried the profound weight of ushering in an entirely new era, while spectators debated endlessly exactly what tier of power Luffy had finally attained. Gear 4th delivered the definitive verdict. Luffy's combat prowess at that exact moment had definitively reached the echelon of the warlords. Doflamingo erupts into mocking laughter, ridiculing Luffy for resembling an inflated balloon. I expected a terrifying monster, not this pathetic sight. Just this, Doflamingo playfully taunts him, urging Luffy to take the fight seriously. The excessive bounciness makes it impossible to even stand. How can you fight like this? Luffy replies with deadly seriousness, assuring him he is entirely serious. Doflamingo sneers, asking what bouncing can possibly achieve. It will beat you until you can't fight back. In moments, Luffy wipes that arrogant smirk off Doflamingo's face. Gear 4th boasted speed surpassing Gear 2nd. Gear 4th grants greater velocity than 2nd. Monstrous power that surpasses Gear 3rd. Armament Haki hardens him into impenetrable iron, delivering far more devastating offensive strikes. Enhanced by high-speed aerial propulsion. A mechanical juggernaut of pure steel. Gum Gum Kong Gun. Luffy's catapult acceleration defies all reaction, leaving Doflamingo utterly helpless to dodge. That colossal fist, compressed by extreme elasticity, unleashes an accumulated reservoir of terrifying force, slashes Doflamingo down from the heavens, shaking his very perception of reality. But that's not all. Gear 4th's Bounceman wields 3 versatile forms. The standard Bounceman configuration possesses monstrous strength, elasticity, and relentless pursuit, striking with blinding speed, bringing Doflamingo completely to his knees. The second is Tank Man, also known as the stuffed form, devastatingly effective against close-quarters brawlers. Leveraging this unique state, Luffy shatters Cracker's seemingly impenetrable biscuit armor, leaving Cracker utterly dumbfounded and roasted. The third is Snake Man. Snake Man's primary advantage is accelerated velocity, with fists that trail and strike like serpents, bending mid-flight. Luffy utilizes this technique to perfectly counter Katakuri's peerless observation Haki, unpredictable python strikes that even Katakuri fails to foresee or evade, conceding defeat with absolute reverence. 7. The Warrior of Liberation. Gear 5th Sun God Nika. Gear 5th is destined to set this summer ablaze. Its cultural shockwave rivals Goku transforming into a Super Saiyan of legend. Following his grueling clash with Katakuri, Luffy confronts the most formidable entity in his history, the most savagely resilient and overwhelmingly powerful adversary, the Yonko Kaido. When facing Kaido, raw strength and velocity mean nothing. Even advanced armament Haki fails to pierce Kaido's scales. Until Luffy learns internal destruction from Hyogoro, channeling Haki deep within the enemy's core, barely managing to breach Kaido's defense. Yet it remains painfully clear. The wounds are inflicted upon Kaido. The damage resembles mere pinpricks, like driving a sewing needle into a massive fingertip. Incapable of inflicting truly grave trauma, Kaido towers above every foe Luffy has ever challenged. A mythical beast of peerless caliber. Luffy is beaten down repeatedly by Kaido, realizing that his own mortal limits hold no remaining hope for victory. Luffy unleashes a desperate, awakening transformation. The Gum Gum fruit awakens at last. Sun God Nika has arrived. Gear 5th, in a profound sense, embodies the absolute essence of freedom. His physique transforms into pliable rubber, capable of bending and shifting without restraint, imbuing the surrounding environment with his influence to morph freely into whatever he imagines. Luffy proudly proclaims his Gear 5th to be the realization of anything he can dream. This eccentric and unpredictable combat style drives Kaido to absolute despair. Furthermore, Gear 5th possesses a uniquely paradoxical nature. As Kaido observes, awakening a Paramecia Devil Fruit typically warps surroundings, while bodily transformation remains the exclusive domain of Zoan Devil Fruits. Gear 5th Luffy simultaneously wields the supernatural traits of Paramecia and the monstrous resilience of Zoan Fruits. Beyond these astonishing attributes, Gear 5th boasts godlike regenerative capabilities, alongside overwhelmingly potent haki. Eiichiro Oda's initial conceptual drafts contained even stranger rules for Gear 5th, such as Luffy's imagination dictating his physical might. Does absolute strength stem purely from imagination? The richer Luffy's boundless creativity becomes. Does his power truly scale infinitely? That concludes today's exploration. Which transformation of Luffy remains your favorite? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We will see you all in the next feature.